This podcast is sponsored by the Building Performance Workshop, helping pros make more money doing better work for happier clients with two brand new courses, BPIExamPrep.com and RaiderExamPrep.com. Enjoy. Welcome to the Building Performance Podcast from Green Dream Group in Chicago. I'm Corbett Lunsford. Today we're talking about trends in high-performance building and retrofits with Gord Cook for the third time, who's from Construction Instruction. Gord, thank you so much for being on the program.
Oh, thanks, Corbett. As you know, you and I share a lot of the similar things. We bump into each other at various shows and so on, and we share a similar vision to where the industry is going. So it's always fun to chat.
Yeah, and every time that I interview you, you have a different title, and of course you do a million things. So Construction Instruction, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a cool new app, frankly. Go to the iTunes store. It'll soon be available on Google platforms as well, but currently on the iPad or iTunes format, Construction Instruction. It's really just a learning site sponsored by a bunch of manufacturers. The cool part, though, is these animations, that the housing construction technologies materials are done in these animations that make it really clear and easy. So you're not reading a spec sheet, you're not looking at a picture or video, you're watching a 45-second animation of how a house wrap goes on, how a basement is properly water managed. It's just a new way of communicating to the industry in something that's not language biased, that gives really good information in the industry on how to construct a house properly.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually, I don't know if you mentioned, but language free, which yes. I think is really interesting. So you work with people who don't speak English as a first language.
Exactly. And so you can go out on site, take your iPad, and play these little animations, again, Construction Instruction free. Show it on and say, I want it done that way, and they can watch it 3 or 4 times, stop it, slow it down. And unlike a video, which is really hard to duplicate and get it right, this Construction Instruction is just kind of cool that the way you can show it, and it's so clear as to how it needs to get done.
Now, in case you didn't hear him say it, it's free. So right now, pause the podcast and go get it, because it's probably not going to be free for long. It's a really good tool. I use it myself. What else are you working on right now that's exciting you?
Well, I think I may have said in the last podcast, I've never been more excited than I am right now. A lot of my work's new housing, obviously, and we're seeing a lot of code change, a lot of progression. I always talk about the steps, the path of continued improvement that we're on. Just about any market I work in, builders are now coming to me, architects, builders, and saying, okay, what should I be doing next? It's not a question of if I have to do this stuff, it's a question of when, because I see the code change or Energy Star, whatever program they're working on. So there's a new kind of focus, I would say, that we know that things have to improve. And then if we go back to the existing house, people are understanding it's just doing sessions today on behalf of EBA, the Energy Environmental Building Alliance. It's a great partner of ours. And EBA has a whole series of workshops on existing houses. And so if you're doing a renovation anyway, a remodel anyway, what should you be adding to that remodel? And the appetite there is now from consumers to know that if I'm taking apart the walls anyway, I should be adding other elements. And I'll give you an example. It was in a place called St. John, New Brunswick, a very high-end renovation. A woman who had done an amazing amount of research as a homeowner on a older home that's probably going to be a $500,000 remodel. But she'd done so much research on every product she wanted to put in, and she must have said to me about 12 times, if I'm doing this, I might as well do that anyway. And she said, it's surprising to me the number of contractors who try to talk me out of stuff.
Because they think she won't want to pay for it.
Won't want to pay for it. And so she said, I want to do my windows right. I've researched the Tyvek, the Flex Wrap, and I want to do it. And contractors, you don't need to do that. It's not code, you don't have to do it. It's not that I know I have to do it. It would be silly not to do it. And another client, I was at a home show on the weekend, a client came up to me and said, it would be silly if I'm re-siding, wouldn't it, to not put 2 inches of foam on the outside of my house? That's an independent homeowner at 40, 45 years old who's re-siding a house. So I actually think there's a fundamental change in the industry, either by consumers, the expectations of consumers, or by homeowners, that we're going, or builders, that we're going to be doing this anyway. It's just a matter of time. I might as well start now. And that's why I find it so exciting. And that's the training we're now doing, is going to the various groups, architects. I think I was telling you about architects, and you wanted me to chat about that. An architectural firm, a great architectural firm, they have about 60 associates, 30 or so, 25 or 30 on the design side, and then 25 or so on the application side, construction drawings. And it was interesting for me to talk to those folks, a bunch of new young faces, folks we haven't seen before. The principal of the company saying, we used to know this stuff. We used to have people at our firm who did this stuff, this building science stuff. We've kind of lost that. And he said, we rely way too much on manufacturers to tell us everything we need to know, and we rely way too much on contractors to get it installed correctly. We're not out in the field enough. That's why you're here, Gord. Help our people understand what we used to know as architects that we've kind of gotten away from. So those are the kinds of things I'm working on.
That's interesting. So to get back to the homeowner thing, if a homeowner says, here's what I'd like, and they have not one, but 3 different bidding contractors all say, oh, you don't need to do that. That's really not required. Do they lose heart, or do they then fire those 3 guys and come find you or someone like you to get it done right? Do they get angry, or do they get complacent?
Most, you can imagine, get complacent. Even in my own case, I was redoing my basement, and I know the contractor, and obviously I consider myself pretty knowledgeable. I had 10 concepts, 10 ideas, 10 technologies that I wanted to do in the basement. LED lights, for example. Now, this was about 2 years ago. For love nor money, I could not get 4 of those done. 6 out of the 10, I could get them to do. 4, I just had to give up and do what they wanted to do, knowing that I maybe change them later next time around, which unfortunately is going to be 20 years from now. In this case, the homeowner I was speaking of it in New Brunswick, she was adamant. She had let go 3 contractors already. Well, 2 in the bidding phase, 1 who she went with, who said he would accept what she was talking about, who ultimately the first day realized he wouldn't. She said, I had to go back out and find somebody else. And she said, I don't think what I'm asking for is unusual. And she was right. There was nothing wacko. There was nothing wrong. She actually had done excellent research and gone to very good manufacturers. And but most get complacent. I know the stats are that 85% of the time, contractors choose the products that go into houses. So if contractors are talking people out of it, people aren't doing it. So it's a shame when a contractor is talking people out of something that they want. What a shame.
I'd really like to hear the Gord Cook wish list for a basement remodel.
Well, it was a classic case. The house was built 20 years ago when I thought I knew everything, and of course didn't. I had pretty much standard insulation on the walls. I had the choice of was I just going to go back to the drywall and start from there? I said, you know what, here's an opportunity. I'm taking off the drywall. Drywall's cheap. So one of the things I wanted when I redid the drywall was to use a paperless drywall. I was able to get them to do that. In a basement, paperless drywall is nice. It's more forgiving with respect to moisture. Because interestingly enough, over those 20 years, there would be times when I'd come down into that basement and go, I'm smelling a little stuffier, a musty smell. And sure enough, when I tore off that drywall, there was about 4 spots, no more than 2-3 feet long, no more than a half an inch to an inch, but along the baseboards where there's little signs of mold on the backside of the drywall on that very vulnerable. And I had good water management on the outside and so on. That's all been done. So paperless drywall was on the list. Insulation, kind of like a Joe Stieberg, John Schraub wall. That is foam tight to the wall with insulation in front of that, higher levels of insulation. So I went to 1.5 inches of foam behind the studs, stud wall in front of that with R20. So I now have an R27 basement wall. And you go, that's too much. The next time it's going to get done is...
You know, Gord, that's really not required.
Exactly. Not required. And that's what the contractor said. I said, I'll pull the studs out. I'll put the foam in. Will you at least drywall it? Oh, okay. So they did that. I wanted the Delta flooring product, the Dimple. I didn't want to lose any ceiling height. It was already pretty low. I did have insulation at the time it was built underneath the slab for the first 3 feet. So I wanted the Delta floor. Originally, my contractor said, no way. He wanted to strap the floor. No way this is going to work. Are you familiar with the Delta floor that comes in either 2x2 squares, a dimpled plastic over top of OSB or underneath OSB? In this case, it came in rolls. And I said to the contractor, you'll love this story. I said to the contractor, Bob, you're putting this in. I don't know. Bob, if you have any questions, problems, you call me. I'm at the office. I'm 2 minutes away. About an hour and a half later, he calls, you got to come over. I'm like, oh, darn. I get over there. Bob's jumping on the floors. He's already got the plywood, the OSB down plywood, tug and groove. He goes, this stuff's fantastic. I'll never strap another floor in my life. He said, look at this. It's all done. It feels really strong. He said, I feel like just maybe Tapcon it down a little bit. I said, well, I guess you could. But he says, it feels pretty strong. So he goes ahead and puts in like 2 Tapcons in the entire floor and goes, that's probably good enough. So there was what I got to. I wanted to change the ductwork to go to low wall. I wanted them to use oval duct in the walls, and well sealed. And so, because oval ductwork inherently is a little more airtight, a little better airflow characteristics. I could not get my mechanical guy, and I'm in the HVAC world. He would not use it. He actually went ahead and put in square duct, and I had to on the weekend come back and change it to oval duct. He would not use it. Isn't that odd? LED lights. Could not get the electrician to put in LED lights. And that's just 2 years ago. And literally 8 months later, same guys were doing a renovation in my office. I said, I want LED lights this time. He goes, yeah, no problem. We do them all the time. I said, 8 months ago, you wouldn't do them. He goes, yeah, it was really hard to get back then. The school jury was still out. But now we put them every spot we do them. So LED lighting. What else did I have on the list? So higher levels of insulation, the Delta floor, the paperless drywall. The four that I couldn't get were the LED lights, the oval, a particular control technology which I had to do later, which is a Ecobee thermostat, a zoned control system. Ecobee is a web-based control system that I can go in and change from away, so I can do a zoning down in the basement. They didn't want to do that. And what was the fourth? It's skipping my mind at the moment. We'll have to think about it.
That's okay.
I didn't think about it.
So getting back to the architects there,
Yes.
you said that the architects used to understand the building science and the applications, and now they've come to rely too much on the products. Sometimes I see that they rely too much on my application services and my consulting to get their products that they keep using and they can't get away from to do crazy good things, which they're just not going to do. Like, you can't use steel studs and have fantastic performance out of it. So how do the marriage of the manufacturers and the products go along with the building science so we can have happy harmony?
And I think that's a great way. And I often talk about strategic partnerships. I think it is important at all levels that we stop this idea that somehow the cheapest way and the best way to build a building is to get 7 quotes and take the cheapest one and bid and all that. I think that world's changed. I think you have to find a couple of manufacturers, a couple of contractors with your design team and get them in a room in a design charrette kind of atmosphere and say, okay, what are we going to do? And if you guys don't have the products, frankly, most of the manufacturers are so now integrated and have access to so many different technologies. If they can't solve the problem for you, frankly, they should strategically partner with another manufacturer who can. The key issue to me is compatibility, that we have so many different pieces and nobody knows what the other side is doing. And it's often that's the issue. This product, there's very few bad building products. It's when they're misapplied is the issue. And so what we really need to understand, and when you bring the manufacturers together, my product fits with this product. Oh, if I'd only known you were using that, then I could have understood how we're going to do it correctly. So I think there needs to be that whole idea. One of the best parts of the LEED process is that you get points for doing that integrated design charrette, which is no more than sitting down and bringing the partners together and saying, how are we going to do this building? I think that's the way to resolve. And, of course, that's the energy rater needs to be at that table. And the energy rater needs to know enough building science to be confident, not just I'm going to performance test, but how am I going to make sure the building is going to pass the performance test up front. So that's the challenge out to the energy raters. It's no longer just your house passes or fails, but here's what would make your house pass or fail from the design phase. Here's how I can make you successful. So I'll use the term strategic partnerships, picking manufacturers that you know and trust, and working within those, and a couple of contractors. And both of those, even if I'm saying competing contractors who sit at the table now no longer as competitors, but as strategic partners in the business, and find the best way to build a house. That would be my view, I guess.
Excellent. Now, when I grow up, I want to be you. So how would our listeners who might be in a position where they have a company that's trying to do high-performance stuff, how do they do that? What would you say are the good business strategies for building your audience and building your client base? Do you speak? Do you go out and speak at lunch and learns for free? Would you say going out and meeting with people one-on-one or in groups is better? And how much marketing or things like that?
Yeah, great. And so one of the things I learned very early on, the easiest way to learn something is to teach it. And my dad did a lot of public speaking, and he said, well, there's various ways to get to the market, but he always said to me, frankly, you got to meet people 4 times. So you can meet everybody 4 times, or you can meet a whole group of people all at once, and that's your first visit. So he encouraged me to do exactly what you spoke about, lunch and learns. I used to speak at, you name it. If there was 7 to 10 people getting together, I was going to talk to them. I mean, the silliest Rotary clubs and that kind of thing. But home builder associations, electrical contractors associations, heating, refrigeration contractors associations. All of those folks are always looking for those, I'll call it lunch and learn or after dinner talks. It's a nice marketing event. Interesting enough, Corbett, the very first one I did, I drove 7 hours to a place called Sault Ste. Marie.
Wow.
7 hours with my slides. And my dad said to me...
Were they slides?
They were slides. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Carousel slides. And my dad said to me, if it's anything... He was in the paint industry. He said, if it's anything like the paint industry, you'll at least get a good dinner. And so I go to Sault Ste. Marie, and it's liver and onions for dinner. I'm like, oh, my God. I'm not even getting a good dinner. And there's only 15 people there. And I talked for 20 minutes, and nobody seemed that interested. But I knew I had a winning strategy when I was introduced to the fellow who I literally met 10 minutes before and had dinner with him, stood up and said, this is Gord Cook. He's a ventilation and indoor air quality, he's an expert in indoor air quality and ventilation. That word of expert, right, did you get? So when you're at the front of the room, you're seen as an expert. Now, it means you have to be good at presenting, and some people aren't comfortable with that. But imagine that scenario where you need to meet people 4 times, 4 different ways, in 4 different contexts. That's one way. Are there other ways? For those who aren't comfortable speaking in front of groups, by all means, speaking in smaller groups. We do often what's called a guided discovery tour, which some guys who aren't necessarily comfortable at the front of the room might be more comfortable out on a site. So you might say to a group of architects, come to my own house or come to one of your houses, and I'll do a blower door test for you. It's one of the things I used to do is I used to go to builders and say, you should really be doing high-performance housing. Well, aren't I already? Well, let's go test your house. I'll challenge you. Here's the numbers, blower door, and so on and so on. If you're anywhere close, I'll buy you lunch. If you're not, you buy me lunch, and we look for a set of plans. So I often did that. I did a lot of free blower door tests, and I always did it on their own house because builders, at least in the renovation and building world, they need to be personally sold on the concept. And when they saw their own house and how it performed, and I was always very respectful. I didn't say they were terrible. I said, well, I can understand why you did it this way. So there's a couple of ideas. But imagine 4 ways, 4 different opportunities to get in front. And the first has to be in a very educational, soft. The second one can start to be more of a sales pitch and just offering those services. So, yes, I did a lot for free. I wouldn't do it for free forever. And you want a revenue stream to back it up. But as a performance contractor, it's a great way, one, to learn it yourself, get the confidence to speak. And if you're not comfortable speaking on your own, the other thing you can do is bring in somebody like a Corbett or somebody local, somebody that's in the area anyway, and piggyback. It's a great, I work with sponsors, DuPont, Tyvek, for example. They'll often bring me to various markets. You could go to them and say, I got this opportunity, an architect. I'm not very good at public speaking, but would you come in? And you become the facilitator for that. And now you don't have to do the speaking. You become the third party kind of sitting back. Hey, guys, what'd you think? Did that make sense? You didn't use that as a sales pitch. That is, they didn't have to drink the DuPont Kool-Aid, but you got to kind of sit back and act as a bit of a consultant there and introduce people. So there's 3 opportunities, I guess. The lunch and learn speaking, the guided discovery out on site, or using strategic partners to make you put yourself in a position of authority with your clients.
Mm-hmm. Last time we talked, I believe you had just come back from Russia. Is that right? From consulting?
Yes, it was, yes.
What else are you seeing happening internationally? Because I'm sure that you get around.
I actually don't get around too much internationally. Obviously, I'm Canada and U.S. We often used to think they were way ahead of us over there, and in some respects they are. Certainly Russia isn't, but we often think the Germans and the Swedes are way ahead of us. Actually, they're not that far ahead of us, and we're moving down the path. What I really love about our industry right now is, as long as, and I've said this before, as long as we commit to a path of continual improvement, every 3 years or so, reevaluating and going, if R20 was good enough 3 years ago, probably isn't now. It should be at R22, R24, and moving up the ladder. For an industry that for a long time has been, well, that's not the way we used to do it, we really should be embracing the concept of we should be changing every 3 to 5. And if we are behind them, it won't be long before we're not. What we often forget is every climate is different. So I'll give you a little example. I was talking to a German fellow who was having a house designed in Canada, Toronto, Canada. And he said, I'm going to do German heating and cooling technology, which was in-floor, wonderful, radiant floor. But in Toronto, you need air conditioning. Well, in Germany, you need a little bit of air conditioning too. He said, well, in Germany, they do what's called chilled water. So they run cold water through the lines. Well, that may work well in Germany. That has a dry bulb temperature, the part of Germany he was from, that has a dry bulb temperature that's equal to roughly Colorado, 62 degrees. Sorry, wet bulb, 64 degrees. But in Toronto, it's 74 degrees wet bulb. And so all of a sudden, his drywall is dripping wet on the ceilings with this radiant cooling. So absolutely, the Germans have figured out radiant cooling and radiant heating. Not that we can't do it in Canada, but we're going to need different solutions in Canada and the United States that are climate specific. We can take their technologies, but we have to understand the science behind, and the science changes. The science doesn't change. The application changes in different climate zones. And we have to respect the fact they don't get as cold as we get. And certainly here we are in Wisconsin, and nobody gets as cold as Wisconsin except Winnipeg, Manitoba. So we have to understand that climates are different. And so I don't. Others might say they're way ahead of us, but I don't think they are. I don't think they're more than, I'll say, 2 to 3 steps, if at all, which is only 6 to 10 years from now will be.
And probably most of the world is actually way behind us.
Most of Russia's way behind us, and various other places are way behind us, and would absolutely love to hear from us or our help, as long as we were respectful of their climate.
Now, because you're a visionary, I'll ask you, in 10 years, when the codes, the 2015, the 2018, the 2021, have all hit, and there are some states, like the state I'm from, which is on an automatic update. As soon as the IECC is published, we adopt it a year later. We will reach the point of diminishing returns in the code. So the worst building you can legally build will be the best building you would want to build cost effectively. What happens then?
Well, I think that's great. At that point, and to say we're done, from the envelope side or the enclosure side, we're done. Now we're still going to have to respond, and I always like to say, as quick as you think those codes are changing, what do you think is changing quicker, codes or the expectation of consumers? So again, the story I was telling this morning, Wednesday night, I'm over at a client's house who has an incredibly high-performance house, Energy Star Plus, great builder. He's now complaining the temperature difference between one side of his master bedroom and the other. Literally. Corbett, it's like, wow. He has me putting in monitoring devices because he says on a cold day, there's a remarkable difference between the left side of the bed and the right side of the bed.
Wow.
So in those houses, there's still going to be problems to solve. There's still going to be the rising expectations. And you may say, that's too picky. Is it? In today's world, when we live in a world where you can have different temperatures on the same side of a vehicle, on the other side of a vehicle, one can dial up 72 and the other can dial up 74, and it's included in the cost of the car, guess what people are going to want? That's within a 4-foot space, and they want either the same or different temperatures. So as much as it'll be nice to know that the envelope is done, if you will, that we've as high levels as we want, but there'll still be all kinds of unique and interesting problems, or I'll say opportunities. Let's go to the opportunity side to solve. That, as an example of that, windows. It's unlikely that architects are going to give up on big windows. And windows, the intermittent loads of windows in a high-performance house get really exacerbated. The same window that used to bring in, 3,000, 4,000 BTUs of heat in a house where the heat loss of the house was 100,000 BTUs, boy, that was absorbed pretty darn quickly, and you didn't have to worry about it. And then the sun went down, and the sun came up, and the clouds came over. But that 4,000 BTU change really didn't affect you much. But when you're in a house where the entire 2,300 square foot house only has a heat loss of 20,000 BTUs, you go, no, we already have houses down at that level, 20,000 BTUs. 4,000 BTUs of heat in one room is a lot of heat. And then you design for that, and the cooling comes on, and 10 minutes later the clouds go in, cloud cover, and the 4,000 BTUs is gone. So those are going to be the intricate problems that we have, is the intermittent loads of people, for heaven's sakes. My sons were all home. Three grown sons were all home, and we're all up in the family room where it's up on the second floor. We now have, of course, big screen TV, which we never used to have. They're each working and playing around on their laptops. 2 are playing on the Wii or whatever it is, and I've got my laptop, and we're all doing stuff. And my one son turns to me and says, I don't remember it ever being this hot up here. And this was Christmas Day, and it was minus 10 Celsius, whatever that is, 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and he's complaining that the room is too hot. 4 people, 4 appliances, and a big screen TV all running, boy, that's a lot of heat load in a small area, and he's complaining that it's too hot. So in years past, we would have said, get over it. It's now we would
That's
go,
really not part of the code. It's not required.
Yeah, it's not required. And now you would say, fix it. Fix it. And so how do we respond to that? So there's going to be lots of, the one, frankly, industry that I think the energy rating contractors need to start meeting with and helping is the HVAC world. I'm an HVAC guy. That trade needs help, needs liaison. You can solve problems. A big part of my marketing of home performance was through HVAC contractors, telling them that I could help them solve the comfort problems that they were getting themselves into. They couldn't afford, they said, to buy the equipment that BPI guys would have. All right, so go out and rent that equipment, if you will, rent your services to those HVAC guys. So lunch and learns the HVAC level, lunch and learns the HVAC contractors, service companies, and so on. You will find yourselves a nice little clientele. Early on, they're reluctant because they know they've made a mistake and they don't want to have to pay for the mistake. But ultimately, they'll understand that better to have a happy customer, even if it costs them a little bit.
I was talking with somebody who was saying that their phone nowadays even could be programmed to not just control their HVAC system, but to actually know where they were, and if they weren't at home, it would automatically turn off their HVAC.
Wow.
Do you think that homeowners being in charge of controlling their own home is the future, or is it programming and strategizing the technology to program it for people so they don't, because in my experience, people like the easy plug-and-play solution.
And I think you will know that there are a number of answers to that. You're going to want systems that can do either. Some homeowners are going to want. These are the same guys who defrag their disc, which I've never done in my entire life. Who clean up their systems and so on. Who love that technology and have. What's cool in that case is when they can do it on their own time and their own schedule. I think they will do more of it. Right now you have to be at home and you didn't know how it worked and you forgot and you went away. Now when you can be at the office, I forgot to turn down the thermostat. Now I can turn it down. I think when people see that on their own time, they can do it. That said, the HVAC guys are already starting to recognize there are a number of clienteles who go, couldn't you do that for me remotely? I was at a house not long ago, and the homeowner, I couldn't understand the new technology. The thermostat was a heat pump, and I didn't want to screw it up. I said to the homeowner, have you got the manual? I just need to read up and check. He says, well, better than that. He dials the phone, phones up the heating contractor, who was literally 2 hours away, and says, he's trying to sort out and get the temperature to go up 3-4 degrees, but only in remotely. The guy did it for me. He changed the fan speeds. And I said to the homeowner, what's that about? He goes, he notifies me when it's time to change the filter, emails me. So, and either if I'm home, I'll do it. If I'm away in Florida, I'll just say, keys under the mat, can you change the filter for me? So he has, much like the large commercial buildings, which have energy management companies, these are now, contractors are seeing a value to them controlling it. So the same smarts, I think the smarts are going to be there. Whether homeowners do it, some will. Mm-hmm. Out of my 3 sons, I can see 2 of them doing it, and the other one going, you do it. So that's the way I would see it.
Excellent. Gord, thank you so much for being on the program.
Corbett, it's always a pleasure. I said you and I share a vision. I travel the country with great folks, as I say, like DuPont or EBA. Look for us. The EBA sessions come to you across the country, EBA.org, and if you're looking for training sessions, go to those are good ones. And then, so I'm always pleased. And I know you guys do great work, and we're seeing really great opportunities for the energy rating community right now to just step up that professionalism, and good luck to the group doing that.
Thank you. And I can't wait to talk to you next time. Gord Cook is from Construction Instruction. You can get that app for free right now, and so you should go do that. You've been listening to the Building Performance Podcast from Green Dream Group in Chicago. I'm Corbett Lunsford. Tune in next time.